Joining me now, Raj Jayadev. He is co-founder of Silicon Valley Debug. That sounds like an interesting project, but wait till you get a load of what it is. So Raj, welcome to the program, brother.
Thanks for having me, excited to be here.
All right, no problem. So, by the way, congrats, you just got selected to 2018 MacArthur Fellows, I hear?
Yeah, it was quite a surprise and shock. So a real tribute to the whole collective community here at Debug.
All right, excellent. So tell us what Debug's about.
So Debug is a community organizing collective that does policy work, advocacy work, is part of the larger movement to end mass incarceration, and also works to lift up the unheard voices of Silicon Valley that often is unheard in the sort of larger narrative of what Silicon Valley is supposed to be.
And so you guys are doing a lot of fascinating things. What is participatory defense?
So participatory defense is a methodology that we created based on bringing the science of community organizing and laying it on top of the criminal justice system. So it's a methodology for families whose loved ones are facing criminal charges to impact the outcome of the case and also collectively transform the landscape of power in a court system that has alienated the community, isolated family members from one another, built up the system of human caging. And we think if we could bring the intelligence and power of families into the courtroom, not as pseudo lawyers, but speaking from the strength and authority as family and as community, we could transform the outcome of cases and hold court actors accountable at the same time.
So Raj, that's really interesting because one of my theses is that judges and other people in authority in the criminal justice system, unfortunately, are lacking a degree of empathy for the non-wealthy. And I don't think it's necessarily because they're bad people, and I don't think it's just for conservatives. I just think that they have this massive stereotype in their head that hey, if it's someone who's poor, they belong in prison. But if it's a rich person in front of them, wait a minute, that reminds me of myself or my kids, etc. Maybe we ought to give this person another chance because they empathize with that person from their same class. Whereas what they view to be lower classes, they feel like prison's the right place for them. Do you think that that's a big factor, and that maybe having the families in there so that they could talk to them as human beings and maybe relate to them and hopefully create a little bit of empathy could make a difference?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the criminal justice system by design is racist and classist. And so being able to penetrate the walls of the court literally and figuratively by telling the fuller story of who someone is a way to really sort of put a wrench in the system. The only way we've been able as a nation to be the largest jail in the world, incarcerate over 2 million people, is to completely dehumanize entire populations of mainly Black and brown people and people without resources. And so being able as a family, as a community to say, look, my loved one is more than a case file. My loved one is more than an alleged charge, that there is a history behind who this person is. There are future prospects. And this person isn't an island to themselves. There's a community that believes in them, is invested in their well-being, and is going to be here to receive them instead of them having to go on to a prison system or a jail system. So we've seen it change the perception of people that are before judges. We've seen it change the perspective of prosecutors, partly because they know now too that they can't operate with complete freedom from any sort of level of accountability. If we have a packed courtroom, they know they're being watched, and they know that defense attorneys have essentially an extended defense team behind them. As you said earlier, most people facing a criminal charge do not have private counsel. 9 out of 10 people facing the criminal court system have public defenders. What that means is you have a small amount of publicly appointed attorneys, public defenders, who have a huge caseload. And even though they may be dedicated and fully in to fight for the freedom of their client, they often don't have the time or resources. But that's where participatory defense plays a pivotal role. The family and the community is essentially arming that attorney with a fully equipped defense team that could tell the fuller story of who their loved one is, could have a presence in court, and also develop and impact what the defense strategy is. So that way a person doesn't feel coerced into taking a plea deal before they even have their day in court.
What are social biography videos?
Well, it's kind of precisely exactly what you said was missing in the system. What we found we needed to do was develop a way for us to kind of dissolve the walls of the court, bring court actors like judges out of the sterility of the courtroom and into the community, and vice versa, be able to tell the truth of a community and a family in a court process. And so, what social biography videos are is a tactic of participatory defense. What they are sort of short documentaries of a person, 8 to 10 minute documentaries of someone that's facing a charge that is presented to prosecutors, that's presented to judges, sometimes presented to juries, developed by the family and a community organization that is a participatory defense hub that says, okay, you think this person is minimized into an alleged charge. But let me tell you the challenges that they've had to overcome. Let me tell you what's at stake if they're detained longer. Let me tell you about the kids who won't have their parents in their lives as a result of your flippant decision. But if you could believe in the community, if you could see the totality of who they are, see their homes, see where they work, see the community they'd be returning to, you end up having a different perspective on who they are. And so we've been using them in the 20 plus participatory defense hubs that we have across the country. I think it's changing the way the courts process their decision making. And I think it's sort of about time that we have another device that communities and families can use to bring sort of a fully dimensional perspective of who their loved one is. So we've been able to stop life sentences from social biography videos. We've been able to win pardons, stop deportations, anything that is lifting people off of the black and white pages to say, here's your penal code, and bring the fuller truth into the court system, we think is having a tremendous impact.
So Raj, I interviewed a couple of former gang members just a little bit earlier on this same program, and one of the, I don't know that I want to say revelations, but one of the important takeaways from that interview was, a lot of people that don't grow up in a community like the ones that they did in East Los Angeles think, oh, these folks had all the choice in the world and they could have gone to Harvard and they could have, saved a small village in Africa, but they decided to be gang members and be immoral people instead. And of course, that's not the situation, and people grow up in different communities with different influences. But when you guys look to help folks, they're the folks who are going to get railroaded by the system because they don't have cash bail. There's the people who really desperately need your help. There's the people that are in the middle, like that grew up in the wrong situation, but did make wrong choices. And then there's probably some genuinely dangerous guys out there. So how do you make a decision on who to help?
We make the decision not based on allegation, not on charge, not on criminal records or rap sheet. We believe in something that, in one hand, is perceived as radical, but I think it is fundamentally what we've been processed by the judicial system since its inception, and that everyone deserves a zealous defense. And that's something that shouldn't be based on the size of your pocket or what's in your wallet. So what we're sort of doing through participatory defense, I think, is actually what the baseline should be for anyone that's facing the system of the carceral state. And that's to say, not so much a decision or a judgment on innocence or guilt. What we're essentially saying, and this is in line actually about what the critique is of money bail, that the decision or the process and where liberty is attained, where freedom is protected, should not be based on income. And in that case, the person with one charge, another person with the same exact charge, should not have a different quality of defense. And what we're trying to say is everyone should have an adequate defense. It's what essentially has been promised to us in the Constitution, and is a dream deferred for most people. And that's why the plea rate is what it is. What you asked is what we get asked oftentimes. Do you have a delineation, a way to determine where you draw the line? And our answer is pretty simple. We don't have lines. We believe everyone deserves a zealous defense. And it's not really us even working on the case. We're not lawyers. We're not paralegals. It's not about us providing a service. If a family comes to one of these participatory defense hubs across the country, what is being asked of them isn't to say, here, find a participatory defense organizer that will make these charges go away. is telling that family member, that mother who came for his son, who may be an alleged gang member, or that high school coach, or that uncle that says, look, my loved one got arrested. They're facing all these years. I want them back home. I believe in their possibility of redemption and restoration. What can I do? And what participatory defense is saying is, it's not about you finding a great lawyer. It's not getting another service. It's about you being an agent of change and bringing the truth of your family and community into a courtroom so that you can bring your loved one home.
Yeah, Raj, it's actually a great explanation because, I didn't think about it that way, but when a defense lawyer is put on a case, they don't get to choose, hey, who's the dangerous guy and who's the guy I should defend and the guy I shouldn't defend. No, the whole point of the system is you defend everyone. And that's exactly how we structured it. One last quick thing here. You guys believe in court watching and court doing. What is that?
So court watching comes out of a long tradition in those that are trying to make changes in the justice system. And it happened even here in San Jose when Angela Davis was around and facing charges, and it's happening all around the country. And that's the process of the public trying to lift the veil of what's happening with the apparatus of the court system. The public who's driving by a courthouse that has seen the astronomical numbers of incarceration and not connecting the dots that the violence that you see on the streets from police that deserves a social movement to challenge. The movement of challenge the ballooning numbers of incarceration needs to be challenged. But in between those two phenomenons, there is an actual machine called the court system, which is facilitating those numbers of skyrocketing incarceration. And so the public needs to be in the courts to understand what's happening on a daily basis around decisions of bail, decisions of charging, decisions of sentencing. But then secondly, it's based on this premise that the idea of people being in those courtroom pews will make judges, prosecutors act differently. And we certainly see that to be true. That's court doing, and there's people all around the country doing it. We're part of that larger tradition. What we said as DBUG is, and as participatory defense practitioners, look, we want to sit and court watch. We hope that has some impact, but we don't want to just watch something. We want to do something about it. So we developed a model called court doing, which is us showing up at the arraignments where bail decisions are made. The public defender actually announced that DBUG is in the courtroom. And all those families that are there for the loved one that's incarcerated, we tell them, look, your presence here could have an impact on the bail decision. You might be able to get it so someone gets released without having to pay any money bail, or get the bail reduced to something that is doable. And the way we could do that is by knowing more information of the person. So we have a sort of descriptive sheet. We fill it out with someone's family member. How long has this person lived in this city? Do they have a job waiting for them? Are there kids waiting for them at home? What can you do? Will you drive them to court on court days? Will you give them reminder calls? And then we as an organization say we'll act as a support even in the background of that family. So now that information is given to the public defender, and rather than that public defender having nothing to say because they don't know anything about the person because they haven't had enough time to review the case, actually has an argument to tell the judge, look, Your Honor, I know the bail schedule sets an arbitrary number, and let's say it's $75,000, something that prices out most people. They can now say, well, look, we have all this information about this person. Here's their family. They're standing up. They're going to live at uncle's house. Auntie's going to drive him to court. He has a job that's waiting for him, and he's going to lose if he stays detained. And I argue that he should be released today. And there's a strong likelihood, there's a strong belief and confidence that he'll return to court. So what court doing is essentially doing is taking away all the excuses a judge has to keep someone detained. They lean on this idea that if I don't keep him detained or her detained, if I reduce the bail to something manageable, if I release them out on their own recognizance, then I don't know if they'll show up at court. It is based on a false premise that people are untethered and alone in the world. The reality is that people have family, they have community, they have friends, and there's a network of movement organizations that will be the supportive network to ensure that someone comes back to court. In that case, then, that person can then come out that day and they get to work on their own defense rather than having to make a decision in a jail cell, thus increasing the likelihood that they won't be coerced in taking a plea deal, they wouldn't have to pay any money bail, and they could finally have their day in court, the thing that was promised to all of us but rarely happens.
All right, Raj Jayadev. The website is siliconvalleydebug.org. Everybody check it out. Doing amazing work there. Thank you so much for joining us, Raj. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for watching this free clip of Rebel Headquarters. Don't forget to become a TYT member today for more exclusive content. Join now at tyt.com/join.